Okay, everybody, so I'm going to take a break here from doing my taxes and stuff, and we're going to work on explosive rounds and stuff for the Armory Mod. Now, how this works, because I didn't show this, me coding this part, I restructured how the damage system works for ammunition in the Armory Mod. It used to be you can provide a simple damage type and a value. Now you can provide as many damage types as you want, and those damage types can be customizable. The first customization type I've added now is AoE. So that's area of effect for people who are not too familiar with gaming. Now this lets me essentially create explosive damage rounds, which I've already went ahead and started doing. I'll go ahead and boot the game up. So the first explosive round I've made is a shotgun shell for the shotgun I have. It's really basic, small area of effect, low damage. Damage is scaled by range. I will be implementing some kind of equation system, so you can say you want it to be scaled by some different factor. Range will be involved in the equation almost always, but you can say I want like at 1 meter to do 1,000 damage, 2 meters to do 100 damage, and so on and so on. If you have some weird explosive type, or you can even say like the farther they get away, the more damage it actually does. This is entirely customizable once I get the equation system in, and I already have the code templated out. I wrote a C equation parser for a class. All I have to do is port that to Java, switch it from a linear parser to a tree-based parser, and then I will have a full equation system that'll do any equation you can pretty much stick into it, so long as you ensure that the variables you're using are variables that are supported by the thing, which the only two variables right now will be supported will be velocity and range. I may put HP of the user in there, and I may put armor of the user in there, but it's going to be a little tricky to try to get the equations to support that from your side. I will try to give you as many tools as possible when you go to work on things. Um, This is taking a bit longer to load than normal. I actually went ahead and changed this my last couple videos to only load the minimum mods I'm working with now. This way these videos aren't having like these 5-minute spans in the middle of them where we're loading mods. I'll go ahead and show you the shotgun shell, and then we'll talk over what we're going to do. The plan is for this type is I'm going to make a rocket launcher for a client. Going to be a simple Russian style RPG-7 most likely. I haven't seen what the models are going to look like. I've been waiting on my text artist to do things, and unfortunately he's been exceptionally busy lately. I mean, I'm happy that he's actually getting employment and stuff, but it kind of sucks because I could use his help. But ignoring the fact that the model's the wrong model for this, because for some reason it's rendering the laser gun model. I don't know why. But this is a shotgun. Here are the shells, and if we fire, it'll damage everything. Now you notice there's none of that ray trace code. This is actually using our entity projectile system that I implemented here after the last video. So if we come down here, it's pretty straightforward. We get our spawn point, which I noted I separated the ray trace from the spawn point system. So the ray trace is actually ray tracing from the center of the character's forehead. But the projectiles all spawn from where the gun barrel is. We create our projectile, we tell it what world we're in, what our munition is, because it needs to know what the munition is. We give it the instance of the gun that's being fired and the entity who's firing the gun. This all will tie into it later. Right now the only thing that's used is the next round data. It doesn't care what gun fired it, and it really doesn't care who shot it. The damage types will eventually use the entity to say, okay, this entity killed something. Anyways, we set the position. We calculated our difference between start and end point. This is only used for settable throwable heading. I did do all this math here, and I was like, you know what, we're going to get our projectile rotation, then we're going to set our velocity. And I'm like, you know what, Minecraft actually does have a pretty good set throwable heading system in here. And it works really, really well. I thought for a second that this was going to backfire and do what the arrow does, which is arc slightly up. It turns out the arc slightly up is actually implemented in the constructor of the arrow code, but not in the set throwable heading, so it works out pretty good. And if we sit here and look at it, you can almost see it actually fly through the air. It's a little white dot. It is flying pretty fast now, so it almost immediately impacts the ground. But if we fire it here, it's actually arcing a little up, if you can see it. There is something a little bit wrong with the code there. Because if I fire it while I'm up here, yeah, the little white dot just arced a little bit to the bottom right there. I'll have to toy around with the code here. So set throwable heading is causing a little bit of an issue. This code is pretty simple though. When you go to set throwable heading, you're passing in the direction you want to go. It normalizes the direction. This is what this code does. So it figures out what is my total value, if we take all of the directions and turn them into one value, then it divide equals all of the values, so the value is somewhere between 0 and 1. It then creates a randomization. Right now our randomization factor is 0, so we've got nothing being randomized. We then put our multiplier here, which is a good thing. This is normalized, or this would mess up really good. So this is literally our velocity, and then we set our motion to our velocity. It then figures out what our rotation and stuff is based on the velocity. This code, I'm not sure if it's going to work properly. I'm hoping it is, because I want my RPG rounds to look like they're actually flying in the correct direction. Some of the ICBM missiles have this issue. Yeah. The round is flying. I can't tell if it's a client-side issue or a server-side issue, because that's sometimes the issue with doing this type of stuff, is I could be having the round spawn on both sides, and this has happened in ICBM Classic. It was a recent bug that I fixed, I think last month, is where it was spawning a missile client side and server side, and the client side one was bugging out, but the server side one was doing perfectly fine. And if we actually sit here and watch it, this has an AoE of I think 3, so yeah, I think it's working server side, because if it hit right there, that is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's outside the range. We can actually check to see what the range actually is. Oh no, it does have a range of 10. That's problematic. And so is the cold I have. Make my throat all think. Blarg. I guess we get to go fix that. This is why I can't have nice things either. Everything always breaks. I think this is only firing server side. So I want to check this real quick. So this will be item gun. On left click, fire weapon. And okay, on update, which is our actual on fire thing, is run server side only. So world is remote is a client side check, and if you put not in front of it, it says okay, if we're not the client, then we're good to go, which means we're the server. So that works. So we know we're firing server side only. So it's not an issue of client versus server. It's literally just an issue of that pitch angle is wrong. Yeah, there's something wrong with the pitch angle. Okay, so we want to close this because we don't need this. Projectile is working correctly, so we don't need to change that. And we don't need to change any of our data classes because they're running properly. The one thing we need to change is the gun, how the gun instance is behaving. I'm going to leave this code here in case it actually is this code that I'm going to have to you know what, I'm just going to get rid of it. It's real easy to duplicate. But it's going to be a pain in the butt to read through. So delta X, delta Y, delta Z. And we're just going from endpoint to start point. I mean, this code should be good. We're gonna put a debug line there. I think we're running in debug mode. We are not running in debug mode, so I can't actually test anything. So we're gonna have to restart this real quick. The thing we're gonna do after we get all this all fixed up is I need to implement rendering. Rendering is going to use my JSON render system, which is going to be a little tricky to do because we're applying it to an entity. When you apply it to an item, you're good to go. But an entity, now I have to start dealing with rotation and stuff. I got to figure out if we can perfectly do it. I'm going to have to make some test models too, because unless my modeler has decided he wanted to work the last couple of days. Actually, I have a request link up here. So we're going to go to models. We're going to go down to this, weapons. So we got no grenades. Pistol still work in progress. Rifle still work in progress. RPG has 2 files in there, but I'm going to say they're both the same. The only thing he's managed to actually complete is the minigun, and I am going to be implementing that in the next few days. He's got nothing done yet. We'll see if he got the textures done. I'll be happy at least if he got the textures done. I don't see a texture file in here for the guns. Okay, so now we're going to have to go to plan B, which is I'm going to have to scavenge through the folders and see if I've got anything I can utilize as a test file. Okay, he's got a work in progress folder. Okay, this is all equipment we're producing for the industry mod. Has he got anything in here? Okay, he made some barbed wire and stuff. He made this stuff a while ago. I don't even know if we actually use it. Okay, we're gonna go through the ICBeam. ICBeam folder should have some stuff we're not actually using. Okay, I think this is the current. Yeah, this is the current missile model. We could just use the ICBM's missile model for testing. Because this is, I mean, after all, this is modeled after an RPG. Is the reason why it looks the way it does. Actually, it's closer to a World War II bazooka round because it's almost identical in the fin style to the bazooka round. Bazooka rounds, I think, had 4 fins. This has got 6. So it's a combination between the two. It does look pretty nice, though. You gotta admit that. I should have an archive in here. There's a Morton folder. Here's some of the new stuff he's working on. Ignore. Oh yeah, he redid the missile model. Yeah, so he made this modular. So this technically is in multiple pieces. And he made a new texture for it too. Theoretically, it should look identical to the previous one, except the fins are now different. I might actually have to poke at him and see if he'll put all the fins back on that. Okay, let's see what else he's got in here. Okay, that crashed. Let me open that again and see if that was just a fluke. That was just a fluke. Okay, here's the new small missile model he made. That looks okay. He's simplified some of the models here recently, where they're a lot more simplistic when they weren't previously. I think he complained something about like trying to do the complex geometry for break apart missiles, because what this is designed to do, if I open it up real quick, is every piece on this can come off. And there's a lot of things I want to do with this, like the midsection I want to pop out and have a turret pop out of it for after it lands. Is there's going to be remote deployable sentry guns, there's going to be spawners, there's going to be gas canisters, and I wanted all these to have some kind of animation that goes with them. So I actually asked him to work on that. But he doesn't have anything we can actually recycle right now. So I may have to make something. For the shotgun shells and stuff, I'm just gonna probably create a textured cube. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and fire this, and we're gonna see what we're looking at for velocity and stuff. Okay, that is a huge negative number. I think I know what's wrong with this. This needs to be start x minus end x, win y. Okay, that should work now, once I reload. Okay, so if I fire, okay, I need to reset the velocity real quick. So we're gonna set this to 2. So I can actually see this thing. I'm out of shotgun shells. Okay, that is just a normal shotgun shell. For some reason, this creative tab is not ordering its rounds in the correct format. I have to look around for these shells every time I want to go find them. Right here, there. Oh, well, that just, that made it worse. Okay. So if I'm aiming straight, okay, it's firing with a slight arc to it now. So, actually, I think that code was running correctly. Let me restore it here. We're gonna set the velocity back to 2 though. Yeah, if I fire straight, it looks like it's firing straight. So if I aim at him, it's doing its job. It's just it's got a really low arc to it. So let's up the velocity even more. So we're gonna go to 5 with it. So yeah, we're doing pretty much a straight line. It's got that slight issue, you know, when we were talking about the last video where the ray trace was skewed slightly. This is having that same problem, where the ray trace has caused the round to be skewed. With the randomization on the error, this won't be a problem. And eventually I'll figure out just how far it is skewed. But it's like when we're up here, and I'm aiming straight down, it actually has almost a really bad issue with the aim. That's kind of working. It's aiming pretty good. Maybe I just need to make sure the velocity is pretty low on these rounds to make them function properly. It's the reason why I use ray traces for the high velocity ammunition. Anything that's going to go faster than the speed of sound, I'm just going to be like, nope, it's a ray trace. Because the amount of distance that round can travel in a single second is so quick that by the time I turn it into Unity and deploy it, it's already smacked into the wall. So ray tracing is pretty good. Plus, if you actually look at Minecraft's new arrow code, since they finally realized this, their arrows use ray tracing now too. So when the arrows get set to really high velocity stupidly, they will ray trace in front of them, and if they know they're going to hit a wall, they'll just hit the wall. So this is working pretty well. I just have to keep the velocity down. So we're gonna bump this up to 10 now. We're gonna see how it plays with 10 velocity. Oh, as soon as I set it to 10, we're watching the dot go to the left there. And my cat is hitting my foot. Hey, hold on. I'm watching 2 dots hit. Okay. Let's see if I can make these rounds not die when they hit the wall, so we can actually see where they're at. Okay, that's not the method I want. I want this here. Okay, so we're setting dead in these 2 spots. What we want to do is we want the round to stop moving. Okay, so we're going to fire. Okay, so for some reason I'm seeing right over here a little white dot fly right there. But then our round is actually right there. So the round is working correctly, but what is this white dot I'm seeing on the left? And the fact is it may be an optical illusion from the smoke being generated. Oh, I clearly can see it there on the left. And there's the weird thing about having weird graphic glitches like this is that they're really hard to debug and really hard to confirm, and even the camera might not be catching them properly because I've got it set down to like 30 frames per second. But it is there. Okay, so we're going to leave the bullets there. And to be honest, leaving the bullets there is actually kind of cool. We'll just make them where if a player gets close to them, you can kind of pick the round up. Okay. Let's see. Add a render to this real quick. That'd be the next step. So in order to do rendering, they're pretty easy in Minecraft. I used to complain about them saying they were hard. It's just a matter of finally learning how to create them is pretty much. So I need to make a package here, and we're going to call this projectile. And we're going to throw our entity up in here because we're going to have more entities in here. We're going to have like missiles in here. We're going to have grenades. As much as I can literally just take one object, entity ammo, and make it do everything, I've learned the hard way that you need to keep your stuff simple. Minecraft doesn't really care if you have like 10 entity classes, 20 entity classes. It only starts to freak out when you start getting like up in the hundreds and stuff. You do want to keep it pretty low. Like if you know you're going to have like hundreds of different types of entities, try to make like one class, and then inside that class add a logic constructor, and you'd be okay. Like this logic constructor says I'm a snail, or this one says I'm a sheep or something. And Minecraft's code is flexible enough that you can actually change your entity around to make it into different things. It's not exactly forgiving when you start to get like tons of entity classes because it slows everything down because everything has to parse those entity lists and go, okay, we've got 1,000 entities, so now I have to handle behavior for 1,000 entities. yeah, it does slow things down. It's an easy way to put it. But we got everything in here. We're going to put a new render in here. So we're going to do render entity, or actually we're going to call it entity render. And the only reason this is called ammo projectile is because its parent class is called projectile, and we actually have a projectile class in the base Volts engine, which was originally cloned from the arrow, then highly stripped down to make it really easy to read. I mean, it's actually got documentation in places where it's confusing. And it could use some more documentation though, but it's prefabbed out in such a way that I could use it for anything. Right now, all the ICBM missiles use the projectile class, so it's pretty nice. And then all the ammo is going to use it. Anything we've got that moves is going to use the projectile class. So we got that. We need the render class. So this extends entity render, I believe is the name of the class. Or is it render entity? Yeah, it's render entity. The other one is the parent class. So this is going to give us nothing to work with. We're just going to have our render method, and it's going to give us a cube. Yeah. So we're going to have to abstract this out in some kind of way where I can call to a render handler to actually do things. I've started getting in the habit, by the way, of actually naming these R and then the coordinate, because this is not the position of the entity. It's the relative position of the player, or the render position is another way to call it. And these two, one of these is delta, and one of these is like something else. I don't remember what, but we're not going to label them because we're not going to use them actually. The only thing we're actually going to use is pretty much this here. So we need to register our stuff though. Client proxy, and then it's, I guess it's probably Minecraft Forge client dot register. Nope, not that. Entity render. No. Game client registry is, I think, what it is. See if that's a thing. Okay, that's not a thing either. Okay, we're gonna have to go look up on the other mods. I don't remember what the class name is, and we're just kind of wasting time trying to like guess at it. So there's a client proxy here somewhere. Ah, it's render registry. They got all these different registries for everything, and like then I've got in my code, I've only got one. I've got the mod manager. It technically could handle this stuff, but I haven't set it up for it. So it's entity projectile, or entity ammo projectile, and then render entity projectile. Oh, entity render projectile. Okay. Let's rename this actually. Keep consistent with what Minecraft's doing. Okay, so that should handle our rendering. We're going to leave this on default. Let's see what we got in my comment. Okay. As much I want to troll Ackless right now because they're trying to troll the rest of us, I'm going to focus on this. So we need some kind of place to register our render data. And that is done in it's done in the Volts engine class for all the renders now because I transitioned all of my client render code over. But I'm going to have to make a new one. And I'm trying to decide, do I want to register an entity render system that just is global, so it's used by anything that has an entity can utilize it, or do I want to make one unique for Armory Mod? And the question is, I'm going to have to probably do both. I'm going to probably have to make a master class that loads all the render data, and then I'm going to have to make a subsystem like I do for how the guns work. So if we go find the gun, yeah, item render gun here. So this uses the global item render system, but what it does is it picks out the individual gun type and renders that. So if we go, yeah, it goes get render data, and then it grabs the unique ID, because all the render data is registered via unique ID, which actually, you know, that'll work. So if we're just grabbing unique ID render system data, then we'll get going pretty good. So we're going to copy this, and we're going to bring it over to our render class. So we got this here. So we're going to have to figure out what our ammo is, and then we're going to have to figure out what the rest are doing. So our default render is going to be this. So we're just going to render a cube if we don't have a bullet. It'll work out really well. And we'll probably transition this too. So there'll be like, if you're an arrow or you're a crossbow bolt, there'll be an alternative render for that where you just have to supply a texture. You don't have to supply a model. To be honest, that'll be supported for everything, because I mean, even if you render a bullet with a 2D texture, it kind of looks okay as long as you handle your code properly. But for this, we're going to have to figure out what we're doing here. So we want to render type as an entity. Yeah, we'll just do render type entity. And then we want to pass in the item that is being rendered. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to get that. Or we only have to pass in the object. So in this case, it's going to be the entity. And then we now need to get our clip data. So we're going to have to sync our clip data to the client, is one thing we're going to have to do. We're going to make this null real quick. So we're going to go like this. So that way I can do a cast check. If entity instance of entity ammo projectile. So that way we don't have any problem with casting. We'll just be sitting right here and we'll get all our data. In our data, we do store the ammo data. And it does have a stack component, so we could actually pass the stack into our render. We're going to pass the entity in it just so we can position our stuff correctly. And of course, the entity will sort of have correct information. I mean, we don't got a lot of variability here, so we're just gonna go entity.data.getUnique data key, and we're gonna do a null point check up here as well. Because I don't sync it client side right now, so I'm gonna have to fix that. And if there's any point in time where it fails to sync client side, we don't want the entire game to crash. But this code is handled, so this is all set up. That means we can actually utilize the current render system. I don't have to change anything, which is nice. I just have to specify that its render type is, yeah, its render type is what it's supposed to be. So we need to go can render is what we need to do. So we have to do this real quick. And we need to make sure it's like this. Do that. And this needs to be changed to can render. Oh. Is there no global method? Oh, okay, here, should render type, here we go. Okay, so should render type. So what we're doing now is we're going if you cannot render the type or you did not render. So if we go should render answered yes, but then we called render and answered no, and that would then create a not, which would be true, and then we come down here and render a box. Or if we don't have data at all to render a box. So this will work out pretty well. And there's, I think, one more method I need in order to properly implement the API, and I believe it is It's not get data null here. There actually is a type check somewhere. Cat, what do you want? Cat, I swear to God, if you claw me, I'll throw you in the laundry room. I actually don't know what else to do with this cat. I can't harm it. It's my brother's cat. Not that I would harm the cat anyways, but this cat is definitely looking like she wants to claw my leg. So let's see. Should render, do render. Yeah, this all looks good. There's probably a few edge cases I gotta put in here, like maybe should render should just ignore it all, like it shouldn't render it whatsoever, because somebody else might added a render handler for this, because they don't want to code it this way or something. But now we need to go and just make a render for this. And we're gonna make it shoot a gun because I'm lazy right now. So I need to go find my gun handler. So here's the render class. I actually hit cancel on that one. You know what, we're going to put it down here anyways. So it's going to be he or render.shell.he. That way I keep it unique. So yeah, this class is a mess, by the way. So this first state right here is our texture for our item. Then this is our first person. Yeah, it should be. I need to get rid of this ID and switch it to something else. Cat, out of my blinds. Okay, I'll open the blinds for you. Well, I mean, I got two needy pets now. Yeah. There you go. You can sit in the blinds. Just don't knock the power supply over. It's right next to the window. Okay, where were we? Okay, so the render system, you specify your content ID, you specify your type. We're going to need two types. Cat, cut it out. Okay, so this is going to be projectile. Oh, God. Oh, come on, cat. I need to use my monitor. Don't step on the keyboard. Okay. You can sit on my bed. I now have claw marks on my arm. Okay, so this is going to be projectile is what this is going to be called type-wise. This will prevent the gun item render system from rendering with it. And then it'll do a couple other things. So at least it should prevent the gun item type system from using it. Let me double check this. You know what? I think it only renders the gun. Yeah, it only renders the gun. Sometimes you're looking at this and it's like, no, it's like there's an actual separate system for rendering the items, and I've been utilizing it thinking it was the gun render system that was handling it all, and it turns out no, it's the Volts Engine item render that's actually been functioning properly. But if we turn this to projectile, this should prevent other render systems from utilizing it. So what I need to do though is I need to come back to my entity render system wherever I left it. I think I closed it by mistake. Okay, so we need to make sure that our render data is actually designed for this system. If not, it'll render improperly. And by render improperly, somebody will make an item render and it'll be like, hey, I'm going to render this as a different thing. So we need to get its type. Or we need to get the data's type. And we're actually going to do this down here because it's probably easier. And we got to check for null because we're not sure if it does exist. But we're going to go data dot, there's got to be a type check somewhere in here. Oh, here we go, render type. And we're going to do a reverse check here. This is actually advisable when you don't know what your data actually is going to look like. It's a really cool trick that you can learn because when you go to do an equal, it's a string checking against a string. But this is a string right here. So what you can do is put the name in here, and we put it here. So we're going to grab this real quick, put it like that. So we go if projectile equals ignore case, our render type. Now if this is null, it's just going to return false. It isn't going to crash. But if we do it in the reverse order where we go data.renderType equals, it'll null point on us. So if we want to go if not equals actually, we're going to do data equals null. So if the projectile type we load for the data for the unique ID is not the correct type, and you know what, I need to recode this. Because what we're doing is we're registering Taz, no growling. The cat's being an asshole now and poking at the dog. It's one of those days. I'm like I'm gonna record because there's nobody in the house but the pets, and no, it's like the pets are gonna both be bothersome. So what we want to do, because I don't want to actually recode the whole thing. In order to properly do this, I do need to start segmenting which type goes to what unique key. That way you can reuse the same unique keys over and over again. But in order to handle this with the current system, I'm going to add a render state to this. So what we do is in the render data, we keep track of render states. So as I was saying, like 0 is our inventory, 1 is our equipped, 2 first person, 3 is our entity render. We don't want to reuse any of these, so we're going to have to come up with a new entity ID. And I'm trying to think of how to do this. We could get render by name. Yeah, we're going to do render by name. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new render type, and we're going to go if it can render the state, and the state's going to be projectile. So we don't care about its type. So we're going to pass that back. And we're going to make a boolean real quick. Boolean rendered equals false. And we're going to go and we're going to start copying this, and we're going to do rendered. And what we're going to do is if data doesn't equal null, and we can get rid of that now. So this is going to be our backup render. Cat. Wow, I don't know what's with the cat. So we're going to go if data dot can render state, and the state's going to be projectile. And then we're going to go rendered equals data dot render. And there's and it just calls get state dot render. That's that doesn't allow for anything. Of course, we're not looking at our render state system, is what we're not doing. So we got a render data, but we didn't look at the states. So we got render state. Is there a render method I can call here? No, it's just rotation, yaw, pitch, and roll. To be honest, this is all we really need. Yeah, we'll just do it this way. I don't need anything fancy. Well, if somebody decides they want fancy, then we'll just do that later. So we want to go, and we just want to go render state, so we just do this. And that should work. So we're calling render here. And that should handle all of our systems. So then we just got to go down and we got to code our render state up. So we're going to leave different things in here. I got to figure out what my type is going to be. So I need to go find one of the Volts engine items, and I need to set its type to the type I want to use. Okay, that's right. Voltage doesn't have content built in there. It's down here in the test path. Okay. Okay, its type is literally just item. That's cool. I think at one point in time I was considering making like tons of different render types and everything, and I actually decided just to use one render type just called item for everything. Because we have individual states, and if we don't want to render anything of a certain type, we just delete it. And I'm going to delete everything but this last one. Make sure I put my comma back. And we're going to change this around. So this is going to be projectiles, what this is. Hopefully this works. I don't know if the render system can differentiate between an ID and a string. I hope it can. If not, we'll have to fix something. Okay, so we need to specify our model ID. Then we need to specify our texture ID. Oh yeah, we do specify a model down here. Cool. So our model ID is going to be Armory and be shotgun test model.he. So we'll just put he at the end of this. And we'll do the same thing for the texture here. Yeah, we'll just go through and we'll do all this. We got to rename our icon here. But for our keys, which one we do? We do test texture. So one of these is a model, and one of these is a normal texture. So we got an inventory texture. So we get test icon he, test texture he. So yeah, we need both of them. Okay, and then our domain stays as this. And then for our inventory, we need to actually make proper names for these. This is model, this is item. So this would be shotgun.shell.he is what we'll call the name of the item here. And we're going to leave these two the same because we're going to make it shoot a shotgun, be for lulz pretty much. We're not going to change anything here. We're going to render everything. We do need to get a texture, so we're going to have to open up our files here. So let's see, Armory Mod, source, main, resources, assets, Armory, textures, items. And for a second I thought we were in the wrong mod path. You know, I'm going to go copy something from other project I'm working on. So I was working on, I mean, all this stuff I'm kind of working on is for a client project, but at the same time it's for everybody else to use. But part of the client project is I made some temp textures that aren't actually going to be used for his mod, so we can go recycle them. Anything that is texture-wise is going to be left in his mod and won't be recycled because he actually requested that doesn't happen. But we're going to copy his bullet real quick. And we're going to rename this to, what did we call this? shotgunshell.he. Rename, paste, there we go. And we'll edit it real quick to make it look like a shotgun shell. So we need some red. We're probably going to make this a little wider real quick. But what do HE shells look like? Actually, I want to check this real quick because I'm curious. So HE shotgun shell. They actually have a special color. Because the color of shells are actually, they actually do have a usage. So we got green here. I actually want to make this for a mod. It's a beehive. They don't seem to have one. Okay, here we go. We got something a little closer. I'm just going to make it green. That seems to be the consistent style. Okay, so that'll work. And then what we want to do, so you just actually kind of just want to get rid of the top here. We'll make it wider first before I make the top of it. And I'm, of course, going to probably come back through here, and I'm going to make this look a lot nicer because I'm going to probably leave this texture in here. It's about the right size for a 12 gauge when it comes to Minecraft terms. Center it real quick, and then I need to put a head on it. So when you actually see some of these shells, they actually look almost like they're a normal bullet because of the fact they have a little protrusion sticking out of it. Because I don't want to call them sabots because that's actually the wrong terminology. I forget what to call them. Slugs, maybe? Because that's kind of what this resembles, is a slug. Put a little HE sign on it. And we're going to move that over just a little bit because I didn't center it when I started writing. And then we'll fill that back in with green. It just looks bad. We'll return it back to that way. Yeah, actually, it looked okay off-centered. And then what I need is I need a little darker green color to kind of give it an edge pattern. And what we'll do is we'll make it even slightly darker on the other side to kind of give it a 3D-ish look. This is why I need my text artist to kind of be doing this kind of stuff, because I've managed to make it look a little bad. And then we want to change the bottom to a gray color. Yeah, I mean, it'll work. It's not perfect. We want to open that back up with GIMP real quick and then trim off the edges. Or trim off the white space. For those who are saying I'm only using GIMP for doing this, I actually do texture in GIMP. I just prefer Paint because it's really quick. But okay, so that should work. That should load from the correct path. So we'll have an item icon right here. And that'll match up. And then our bullets should, in theory, if we did all this correct, look like shotgun shells. Or look like shotguns when we fire them. I'll have to make a shell. Actually, I don't really need to make a model for these, but we're just trying to test the model system. When we're done, I'm going to probably remove this. Close a couple things over here on the right side. Been reading tax stuff all day. Technically, I've already done my taxes a few days ago, but I got to fix my current taxes, and I'm studying taxes for next year because now I'm technically officially a small business, which means I've got to properly fill out taxes. And for those of you who've done normal taxes, business taxes are not anywhere close and require more effort. At least that's my impression of it so far. To be honest, I'm no expert, and I'm trying to become slight of one, because the last thing I want to do is not pay taxes and be screwed over. Especially since I'm trying to start a company here, and trying to make a game company is what I'm trying to do. It doesn't mean I'm going to be abandoning the modding. So the modding is going to end up being a separate organization. So it'll be BuiltBrokenModding and Gaming, which will be think of it like the Minecraft Forge forums. It's what it'll kind of be, or the Minecraft forums. This is going to be a little entity that's directly attached to Minecraft, but not quite owned by them. And that'll be the whole modding and gaming thing. They'll exist there for the community. The community can utilize it. We'll have our own forums and stuff. Okay, so the texture didn't load. Did the model load? It doesn't look like it loaded. Oh yeah, I know why it's not working. We neglected to name our object properly. So we're still using Armory shotgun here, which means if I actually looked at the shotgun, it probably would have broke the shotgun's render. So in this case, I need to close this. I need to go figure out what we named our shotgun shell. Did we accidentally? No, we didn't edit. I thought for a second we might have edited the test renders. It wouldn't have been that big of an issue, but would have been kind of retarded. So here's our actual name of our object. So we got to come up here, and this is our content ID. In theory, this should work. And eventually, I'm going to recode the system so you can reload your renders in real time, because I want people to kind of be able to do this stuff through resource packs. I'm going to figure out some way I can allow a resource pack to override the renders without messing with the originals and stuff. So I got to do that. I also don't want people putting their renders inside the resource folder, because the resource folder structure changes between Minecraft version. So the idea would be there would be some kind of render system that'll be implemented that people could use through resource pack that'll be slightly different than the one that's in the contents pack. So right now, how we're doing all the JSON stuff is you put everything in a content pack type system. Damn. I made a couple comments on Imgur, and said comments are now up at a 200, 300 point range. Trying to figure out where these So I got a reply called Swing and a Miss, and I'm trying to figure out exactly where that comment went on Imgur, because Imgur's system is really garbage for navigating its comments. Okay, so in theory, this should have worked now. Yep, right there. Here's our HE shell, although that gray didn't blend with the background very well, so we'll have to fix that. I'll probably change it to brass, because that's what these would probably look like. I'm not seeing the model for that. Oh, you know what? I'm not seeing the model. Give me 2 seconds, I'll fix this. Hopefully we're in debug mode. It looks like it. So I neglected the easiest mistake to ever make. I didn't translate. That should fix it. I'm out of ammo. Okay. Maybe not. We're not syncing our projectile data to the client. I completely neglected that one too. So this should fix the fact it wasn't translating, which it wasn't a problem because it clearly was, I don't know what it was doing. We need to actually move this translate down here. So can render. Because if we don't do that, then it'll break this. And then we want to translate by the negative after we're done. That way, actually we don't need to even do that. I got a better way. Do this. How the GL push and pop works is basically I am saving the matrix before I did anything. Then I'm popping the matrix after I've done things. So that way the matrix that was here before is the same matrix that's here after. So when you hit translate, you're actually messing with a matrix that is handling all the render code. And it manipulates that matrix so that way your object renders correctly. The game engine I've got is doing something very similar, although I've got to learn how to use it a little better. But yeah, this should work. So I just now need to sync my render data to the client. IMO data does have a unique identifier, so I should just be able to sync with additional spawn data. So write spawn data, so we want to go if data doesn't equal null. We're going to rename that real quick while we're at it too, because it's not unique enough of a name to understand what it means. I don't need to rename. Oh, come on, you stupid system. Every comment in the package does not need to be renamed simply because it has a similar name of data. Okay, so we want to go, and we want to sync a boolean. So we want to go buffer dot write boolean, and we want to go ammo data doesn't equal null. So we want to go tell the client the very first thing is that we have something. So down here, when we go to read, we go read additional data dot read boolean. If it's true, we have data to read. If not, we want to set our ammo data to null. This is just in case that we do some weird logic where we take a bullet and we make it disappear simply because it doesn't have ammo data client side. There's a few things like to utilize this for. If we do have ammo data, and then how we literally sync it is we just go byte buff utils dot. We want to write a UTF string, and we just want to go ammo data dot get unique ID because these IDs should match client and server side. These are created server side, and then when a user logs in, the server sends all that data to them. This is one of the cool things about this, is I'm trying to develop a way that eventually we'll be able to make guns server side only, and then they'll all sync to the client. Had a cough off mic there for a second. So now we get the string back on here, so we're going to get ID equals byte buff utils dot read UTF string and additional data. So that should get us our ID, and then we just got to go ammo data equals Armory data handler, I believe, dot instance dot get. We want to get, I believe, ammo, and then we want to get an object. So we want to pass an ID, and then we'll cast this. That should work. Let me go find the ammo class real quick, because if we look at the ammo class should have this in it. Yeah, so it's an entry of ammo entry data. So if we call get ammo data on here, it calls get data. Get data calls get data stack. Stack gets the type. So yeah, the type would be ammo, and then it does meta entry list though. Yeah, so type's ammo. You know what? I'm gonna put a just so I don't crash myself. Object equals. And then we'll go if object is instance of ammo data. And then we'll go ammo data equals object, and we'll cast it to ammo data. Okay, that should prevent me from crashing, at least on that part. This should sync. We do need to save it, so I guess while I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and save it while I'm at it too. So write to MBT. So we're going to go here real quick. And there's read MBT. So copy this real quick. Just trying to make sure these method names match one-to-one. Okay, so that should work. So and then we want to go super, because if we don't do super, then we're going to mess our whole system up. Then we just kind of want to repeat the same thing we just did, except we don't need to write that we don't have a ammo data object, because there's another way to do that. So we want mbt.set string, and we just want to go ammo data dot get unique ID. Okay, yeah, we got to set the name too. Ammo ID. So that was just nothing unique. When we come down to here, how this works is how we check to see if it exists, and we go if it contains, or it should be mbt.hasKey, and we go ammo ID. That's how you kind of check to make sure you save something or you haven't saved something. You don't need to do this for everything. It's only certain types of data that you need to check if it exists. If it's an integer, you don't need to check it. Boolean, you don't need to check it. There's default returns for them. You can if you want to not influence your default values, but if your default value is 0, you can just call 0 for an integer. If your default value is false, you can call it for a boolean. So in this case, we're going to call pretty much all the same code here, except in this case it'll be mbt.getString and ammo ID. Oh wait, we don't want this part. Damn, that train passes by at the same time every day. Okay, so this should all work. This should all work. Now we just need to launch it, and we're in an hour, so we gotta cut this up pretty quick. Debug. This should be done pretty much. There's a lot more things I gotta toy with in the entity object. Like I've got to do some more collision box work. I got to work with this stuff here. Like I've got to put a timer here, so that way even if I do leave it, impact the wall and leave it there, there's got to be some kind of lifetime timer to delete the object. I did this for ICBM, where ICBM's missiles impact the ground. If they don't blow up, they stay there. The only problem is people weren't cleaning the missiles up, so they were causing an issue. So eventually I had to put a timer in there, and the timer was like a day. So if you didn't come and pick your missile up after a day of ticking, it would delete itself. And by a day of ticking, that means that chunk was loaded for a full day, not that the chunk unloaded and then reloaded and deleted itself. So if you come back to your game like months later, it'll still be there. It's just if it's been in the chunk with you for 24 hours, it'll delete itself. I believe that's configurable too. There we go, get myself some water, son. My throat's not all dried up and raspy like it was the last couple times. Now, there's other things I gotta do. I guess I gotta do punch through rounds, so rounds that'll go through entities. How that works, it will work mathematically, is it'll hit the entity, calculate his collision box, and it'll pop out the other side of his collision box. That way it doesn't collide with him again. I also gotta do detection if I hit an entity in the head versus the arm versus the leg. That way you do more or less damage with the bullets. But we're gonna work on this, so I'm shooting shotguns. Rendered the cube still, which I guess is okay. That is cool. You gotta admit that. I got a gun that shoots guns. Oh, and we crashed. Didn't take long. I figured something would cause it to crash eventually. On impact AoE. Somehow the entity got passed in as null for the shooter. Actually, I know exactly what caused this. So world is not server because it tried to pass in the shooter of the entity, and the shooter is null on the client. So we're going to go if attacker doesn't equal null and entity doesn't equal null. Be honest, I should have had this in the code anyways, because this kind of stuff it happens. Actually, the attacker should be to be honest, the attacker can actually be null on this one. So I don't need the attacker here. I do need the attacker to, or rather I need the entity to exist here. The attacker is technically optional. But if you impact a null entity, then you didn't impact anything, so there's no point in checking null here. We will leave the attacker so it can be null, because the only place the attacker actually does get used is when we actually hit something. We want to go, okay, this entity has killed you or this entity has damaged you, which is a thing I do need to fix eventually because it's not implemented. It's there, the code is ready, but it's not implemented. But that's been fixed, and I'm going to cut the video here because I got some other things to do. So I'll see you guys.